John Collins moves into the starting lineup with Walker Kessler out. He thrives. The Jazz fight. With Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, too much. We're talking about it next on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Night one of NBA Cup action. The Utah Jazz fall to the Phoenix Suns 120-112. Go to 0-1 in group play. David Locke along with Ron Boone here for you on POSTCAST. And the Jazz fall. They really never threatened to win this game, if we're being honest, but they fought through the game. So there's the positive. Some guys played particularly well, but the Jazz, they got hit early. They fell behind 33-21 at the end of one. Then that got stretched out to a little bit more at the half. They trailed by 15 at the half. They played well in the third quarter, which is contrary to the way they've done things most of the year, and never really threatened in the fourth. You kind of thought they might, that there was one or two of this. But Bradley Beal kind of put this one on ice with back-to-back threes early in the fourth quarter and made it so there was too much to overcome. From a Jazz standpoint, John Collins has got to be the stalwart tonight. His play has just been terrific this year. He fills in for Walker Kessler. I think the pick-and-roll defense wasn't nearly the level it has been the last, but that's not what John Collins does. John Collins did what John Collins does really well.
Yeah, he's one of those energy, hustle-type players that, and I'm watching his shot selection. He's always open. And even early in the ball game, and I think he may have taken 3 of the first 4 shots, 3 of the first 5 or something like that, and he was open. So he's taking them. Tonight he gets up how many shots? 19 shots, made 12. You can't fault any of that. But, again, like you've mentioned so many times, he plays 2 positions for this team, and sometimes he gets a little confused about which one he's playing.
I think about it. It's kind of funny, actually. So, John, I hope I have this right, because I'm not trying to make fun of John at all. I'm actually trying to understand his plight. So, John goes through all of training camp as the backup 5. As this season has developed, when both Lauri and Taylor Hendricks got hurt, well, all the 4s were gone. So then suddenly Drew Eubanks was in the rotation as a 5, and John Collins slid to the 4. Well, I would say the Jazz offense is almost interchangeable 1 through 4. All the time in practice, Will Hardy will say same play, different spots, except for the one guy who does things differently is the 5. For example, the 5 in certain sets always inbounds the ball, or in other sets never inbounds the ball, or depending how they're playing. So the first night when John slid over to the 4, when this happened kind of mid-game and Taylor gets hurt and kind of was a little messy, and then John's worked pretty hard for the last few weeks to get it right. If I got it right on the very first play of the game tonight, Lauri Markkanen and John Collins both ran to the right corner because that's where the 4 goes.
Right.
And Lauri was like, dude, you're the 5 tonight. And it kind of it's a subtle little thing, but it does kind of change what he's asked to do both offensively and defensively. And then at other points in the night, I don't know if he played with Filipowski tonight. Filipowski was really playing the 5 most of the night tonight, and so then he would play the 4. It just means you're playing on the wing rather than inside. You're not, I talked about inbounding the ball. That's actually a really big thing because in the 4-out spacing the Jazz use, the 5's got to be under the basket. So you don't want to inbound the ball. You got to get all the way down the floor for the offense to run. But the 5-out spacing, the 5's the trail, so he would inbound. It actually sounds like a silly thing, but it really matters to how the Jazz do things. So I give John credit because on the first play of the game, I think that he and Lauri both decided to play Red Rover over in the right corner together.
Yeah, you pointed that out, and all of a sudden John had to run back up to the free throw line in order to start the offense. So he's an interchangeable, high-energy, rebounding, good player coming off the bench.
Bummer of a night for me from a preparation standpoint, honestly, but also from a I want to see standpoint. So the most interesting thing that's going on with me right now in the Jazz is that they came into the night as the 3rd best pick-and-roll defensive team in the NBA. They were 30th out of 30 last year. So and Will Hardy admitted that they basically had this posted all around the building and all around the locker rooms and in the practice facility for the players to see. And the question then became are you willing to get better? Are you willing to commit? Assistant coach Scott Morrison and Sean Sheldon really spent the offseason analyzing their defenses, and then Scott Morrison is a really brilliant offensive mind, went and analyzed offenses to figure out how to do things defensively, which I thought was interesting. And the Jazz are doing a great job at it. Phoenix runs the most pick and rolls in the NBA, so I was super excited to see how we deal with that. But then Yusuf Nurkic gets hurt, and Walker Kessler's out, and so this really wasn't a great test of whether the Jazz are as good a pick-and-roll defense as the numbers say.
Yeah, and what I would like to see, though, is what we saw with Phoenix tonight. And I think I mentioned it to you, where they ran a pick-and-roll to a dribble handoff to another pick-and-roll. Everyone gets to move, and you, for the most part, you get the defense to scramble. Now, what does that do for young players going forward? They learn how to play basketball rather than one pick and roll, then you got ISO, that type of thing. You learn how to play basketball and make your teammates better.
Yeah, and I think the interesting one on the comment Mike Budenholzer made to us pregame about whether they play as much pick and roll tonight is he really sees pick and roll as a first action that leads to a second or third pick and roll that leads to the ball movement. He sees the pick and roll as the creation of the activity, not the end of the offense.
Yeah. Just as I mentioned earlier as well, the pick and roll has been forever the number one offense. Now getting creative with the pick and roll and how often you can use it in a 24-second clock is something that I probably going to see a lot more teams doing.
Del Toledo, who's always in our chat room and is always unique with his perspectives, and I haven't called him out for being unique yet this year, has the most unique perspective that the Suns lack depth. That's interesting to say about a team that was missing 2 starters tonight and won by 8.
Right.
So I'm not sure I would agree. All right, Jazz fans right now, I would say, are most excited probably about Kyle Filipowski. Kyle Filipowski with his second straight really strong game. 18 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 block shots in 23 minutes. What are you seeing out of Flip?
What am I seeing out of him?
Yeah.
I like what I'm seeing out of him. And he did show me something tonight with some power moves at the basket. I mean, you're looking at a guy that's built like a rail and you don't think is as strong, but he has some power moves around the basket and was able to, even with a lot of contact, still able to finish. His jumper's got to be a little more consistent because he does sometimes miss all over the place, like long.
What was Kyle tonight? 2 of 4?
From what?
3? Talking about Kyle Filipowski.
That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm beginning to believe in his jumper.
Well, I believe in his jumper as well.
I didn't believe in his jumper when we drafted him, by the way. I just want to point that out. I guess that's so. Maybe that's what you're.
Consistency and I look at shooting probably a little bit different.
Yeah. How do you see it?
Because I look at when the way guys miss.
Okay.
When they miss, how consistent are they with their miss? You talked about Jordan Clarkson early in the year, how all of his shots was hitting the front of the rim, but were they on line?
Right. So like a Keontae George air ball from the left wing.
That worries me.
Worries you far more than like if you front rim it 5 times in a row.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. Okay. I'm becoming a Flip believer. I'm not like
I'm believing as well.
Yeah, well, somebody just said become a Flip believer. Like I'm only just being honest that like he's just doing a lot of stuff I didn't expect him to do. It's actually kind of I'm in awe and in appreciation and in testament to what he's able to do. I'm super curious about one thing that happened tonight. He took the ball with a right-hand dribble, and the defender jumped up to the top side waiting for his spin, and he couldn't get it. He'll figure that out. It's not that hard. You actually just stay with your right hand and put in a jump hook, which will be a move he'll add very easily. But that spin is always what we had. If that is true, that happened tonight, that means it literally took the NBA 24 hours and no games to have a scouting report on his inside moves.
And to add to that, what we were very impressed with when he first started getting into the basketball game was what? His passing ability.
Yeah.
And not only his passing ability, but his passing ability off the dribble, something we've been trying to see if Lauri could do a little bit more of. But that was what was so impressive. Now we're seeing a little bit more of his game that is going to translate into, obviously, what we're seeing now is he's in the rotation with a number of minutes.
He's been great. I'm going to bring up one negative point tonight. And I think this is a super interesting, and I don't mean it negative. It's not positive, but I don't mean it negatively. I think it's a super interesting aspect of this season of development for all the teams and players and individuals. How far are we willing to go? And what I mean by that is, how long does a player get to play who's shooting 18%? How long, I'll be specific, we're running isolations to Lauri, Markkanen, and he is shooting 10% on isolations and 20% on post-ups so far this year. How are we so committed to him learning this that for 82 games, we're just going to keep trying this and have him develop the skill regardless of whether it works or not? Maybe that's the right thing. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing. In fact, I think that might be the right thing. How long are we letting a rookie play or a second-year player play or a third-year player play when they're scuffling? Maybe it's 82 games. That might be just fine. I just think that's going to be one of the really interesting questions of the season.
I can't add to that other than the fact that how many years Lauri been in the league?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
so.
right. But I mean, yeah. So, like, at what point do you, like, does Lauri say, like, hey, by the way, I don't want 2 shot attempts tonight that I'm 3. Like, Lauri looks like he's not playing well because he's 7 of 13 on his right. He's not getting enough shot attempts, but on his, and the reason they're running isolations and post-ups to him is so he can get more shot attempts. But on the post-ups and the shot attempts, he's tonight, I would guess, post-ups and isolations, he's 0 for 4. Everything else, he was 7 of 9. Right? Like,
okay.
his catch and shoot right now is at 50%.
So it backs up my point of being able to play with multiple passes and
right.
Phoenix, pick and roll, dribble handoff, pick and roll, boom. Look what I have here, you know?
Right. I mean, hey, by the way, the answer to my question might be 82 games.
It just
might be. And it's like, it's a really interesting concept. It's 80, like, yeah, like we're going to try this for 82 games and we're going to try to be as competitive and play as hard as we did tonight every single time. So the guys are in situations. So Lauri gets the ball in a 6-point game and has to figure out how to get a shot off on his own with 7 seconds on a shot clock. Yeah. Because if we're going to get better and be a 50-win team, that's going to have to be part of his skill set. 100%. And if we're going to be a 50-win team, then player X, who's scuffling miserably, is going to have to learn how to get through tough moments, and that's fine. That might be the answer. I just think it's super fascinating. That's what I'm saying.
We need a win at home.
Yeah, we do.
We need a win at home.
All right. That was Postcast. I'll probably be talking about that concept more tomorrow on Locked On Jazz. Make sure you sign up for the daily Locked On Jazz newsletter. Have you signed up for the daily Locked On Jazz newsletter yet? It's at Locked On Daily.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Locked On Daily. Go do it right now. Thanks very much for tuning in today. We do greatly appreciate you.
What about a...
Oh, yeah, reliability. Sorry, Lacey. Do I have a final box, or I'm just looking over your shoulder? Kyle, John Collins.
John Collins for sure.
That's it.
That is totally it. Yes.
Jazz fall tonight, 120-112. Ron and I like you a lot, and we appreciate you. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for tuning in. And go check out the National NBA channel 24/7, or check out Locked On NBA. They'll have game night after that with all the updates. Have a good one.